the eyes that followed me through the parking garage. The first time I saw the eyes, I assumed they were reflections, some trick of the fluorescent lights trembling above the concrete levels of the garage late at night. I had worked the closing shift alone, stepping into the echoing emptiness where every sound felt multiplied, stretched, and tossed back like something unseen paced beside me. Those eyes hovered between the support pillars, low to the ground, too steady to be headlights, too far apart to belong to any normal animal. I blinked, and the eyes vanished, swallowed by the grayness, leaving only the damp smell of concrete and the uneasy feeling that something intelligent had crouched there watching. I quickened my pace, keys trembling in my hand, listening to the hollow scrape of something dragging across the floor in slow, deliberate intervals behind me. When I reached my car and slammed the door, the sound stopped instantly, as though whatever made it pause to listen, waiting for my next move. The following night, the garage felt colder, the fluorescents flickering in irregular spasms, like they were reacting to something moving beneath them. Halfway to my car, I noticed those same eyes again, wider this time, brighter, reflecting a dull, sickly glow that didn't match any light source in the garage. They blinked slowly, not with lids, but by dimming and returning, like pupils adjusting to study me directly, testing how close they could approach before I ran. I pretended not to see them, walking steadily, though each step echoed like something followed exactly one beat behind, mimicking my pace with unsettling precision. When I reached the car door, the eyes rose higher, not with steps, but as if the creature stretched upward in a single fluid motion, without ever standing. I locked the car with shaking hands, convinced the dark between the pillars held a shape too tall to move naturally, too fluid to be human. The next morning, dusty footprints clung to the side of my car, elongated prints with no heel, no arch, just long pads that tapered into narrow, clawed points. I scrubbed them off, telling myself some raccoon or stray dog got curious, though the prints reached nearly to my window, far too high for anything animal. The third night, the garage lights were dead, plunging everything into thick shadows that moved with the slightest shift of air, as if the darkness itself listened. My phone flashlight cut through only a thin slice of space, illuminating a narrow path toward my parking spot, though my instincts begged me not to walk it. Halfway there, the beam caught the eyes again, this time only a few feet away, hovering at chest height, unblinking, reflecting nothing except my trembling light. I froze, breath locking in my throat, watching the eyes widen, not with emotion, but like they adjusted to take in more of me at once. Then came the sound, a soft click, followed by a wet inhale, as though something with too many joints shifted forward, dragging itself closer on limbs that scraped the concrete. My light flickered over a silhouette, stretched impossibly thin, arms so long they touched the ground even while it stood upright, its spine bent at an angle that defied anatomy. I backed away slowly, not daring to run, knowing instinctively its sudden movement would invite it to rush forward with whatever speed its body could muster. The eyes dipped low, edging closer to the ground, studying my ankles, my legs, my stance, like it was waiting for permission to approach. I reached my car only because it allowed me to, because whatever lurked behind those eyes seemed more curious than hungry, more investigative than violent. When I shut the door and locked it, the thing tilted its head sideways, watching me through the glass, its outline barely visible except for those enormous reflective eyes. It leaned forward so close the window fogged slightly, the condensation spreading in small, symmetrical patches, like multiple nostrils, tested the temperature of my breath. I drove off without looking back, but the sound of nails dragging across the rear bumper followed me until I hit the street and the garage disappeared from my mirror. The next morning, deep grooves marked the bumper, long parallel scratches spaced perfectly apart, as if something gripped it while running behind my car. I stopped using the garage entirely, parking blocks away despite the inconvenience, though at night I still felt watched on my way home, as if the eyes learned my roots. Sometimes, late after closing, I catch a glimmer in alley shadows too wide, deliberate eyes hovering at the same height as my own, waiting. And when I reach my door, the faint scrape across the pavement follows me, one step behind, matching my pace with perfect mimicry, patient and curious as ever. The face that formed in my bedroom wall. The first crack appeared above my headboard, a thin, jagged line running down the plaster, like the house had exhaled too hard in the middle of the night. I didn't think much of it until the crack widened by morning, curving slightly, almost like it was bending itself into a shape rather than splitting randomly from pressure. That night, I woke to a faint settling noise, the soft crumble of plaster falling onto the sheets, drifting down in slow, powdery flakes from the growing opening above me. I swept the dust away and tried to sleep, but every few minutes the wall clicked, a subtle popping sound like something pushed outward from inside, testing the surface. By the second night, the crack curved into a gentle arc, a shape disturbingly close to a smile, thin and deliberate, stretching wider each time the house went quiet. I pressed my ear to the wall, expecting silence, but heard a faint rustling instead, like fabric brushing against skin, or someone breathing shallowly on the other side. I stepped back quickly, heart racing, suddenly aware that the wall no longer felt like a barrier, but a thin membrane separating me from something attentive. When I came home from work, the crack had developed two smaller branches higher up, forming perfect symmetrical angles, positioned exactly where eyes would sit in a human face. The plaster around them pulsed slightly when I looked at it, as though warmed from behind, as though something alive pressed its forehead close to the surface. I tried patching the crack, smoothing joint compound over the smile and the forming eyes, but the wall crumbled through it instantly, rejecting the repair like skin shedding a scab. That night, the eyes deepened, two hollow impressions sinking into the plaster, forming sockets too deep to be accidental, too round to blame on structural settling. When I shined my flashlight at them, the shadows inside shifted subtly, like something leaned back to avoid the beam, adjusting its position just beyond the surface. The smile cracked wider, plaster flaking off in curls, revealing a darker layer beneath that didn't look like insulation or wood, but something soft and uneven, almost porous. I moved my bed to the opposite wall, but the face followed new cracks, spreading silently in the night, forming the same haunting outline, exactly where my head would have rested. By the next evening, the face had grown fuller, cheek shapes bulged outward, forehead stretched, the smile pulling deeper into a gash that curved with unnatural delight. I tried ignoring it, tried pretending it was all stress and imagination, but the eyes kept sinking farther back, watching from the darkness of their forming sockets. One night, I woke to the sound of wet plaster peeling, a slow tear like tape being ripped away, and saw the smile widen another inch, revealing teeth-shaped ridges beneath. They weren't sculpted like decoration, they looked grown, each ridge pushing through the wall, like bone forming beneath thin, cracking skin. The eyes reflected faint light from my phone, glistening with the moisture that shouldn't exist inside a wall, something glossy and alive shifting behind the depressions. I pressed my hand to the face, desperate to prove it wasn't real, but the wall felt warm under my fingers, pulsing softly like a heartbeat thudded somewhere deep inside. The moment I touched it, the smile twitched just a subtle shift, plaster cracking along its curve, as though reacting to my warmth, pleased to be acknowledged. I stumbled back, knocking over a lamp, and the house went dark again, the only visible shape that faint, wide grin glowing slightly from the oils that seeped through. I slept on the couch that night, but around 3 a.m., I woke to a soft scratching behind the living room wall, the same rhythmic strokes that once came from the bedroom. By morning, a new crack arced above the couch, the beginning of another smile forming, mirroring the one that now stretched ear to ear in my bedroom. I packed my things fast, stuffing clothes into bags, not bothering with boxes, feeling watched by every inch of plaster that seemed to breathe around me. As I dragged my suitcase out, the bedroom face had grown so distinct I could make out individual ridges in what had become a full set of teeth, curved upward in a grotesque grin. The eyes looked deeper now, almost cavernous, and when I stepped into the hallway, I swear I heard a soft hiss escape the wall, a whisper shaped like a word I couldn't understand. I moved across town that same day, but sometimes late at night, I hear faint plaster clicks in my new bedroom, cracks forming quietly, as if something familiar is starting to smile behind the walls again. And each morning, the first thing I check is whether the paint has shifted, curving into shapes that look a little too much like someone learning how to find me again. The window that kept breathing. I didn't notice the window was breathing until the third night, when the glass fogged from the inside, even though every vent in my house was cold and dead. Something waited behind it. I just moved into this old third-floor walk-up, the kind of place where every floorboard echoed like a footstep. My landlord said the previous tenant left unexpectedly. I never asked how unexpected. On my first night, I heard a soft tapping on my bedroom window, gentle and rhythmic, like a knuckle brushing glass. I blamed the wind, but my nerves didn't buy it. By the second night, the tapping turned into a slow dragging, as if something traced its fingers across the pane. I felt watched, but the courtyard below was empty. On the third night, I woke to the sound of breathing wet and shallow. The window fogged in the shape of a face, round and wrong, too low on the glass to be anyone standing outside. I froze, pretending to sleep, listening as the breath thickened. The fogged imprint pulsed, expanding and contracting like lungs. There was no reflection, just a silhouette pressed close from the other side. Something whispered through the glass, too muffled to understand, but sharp enough to cut through my skull. I wanted to run, but fear pinned me down like a fist. The fog cleared for a moment, revealing two small eyes, dull and milky, hovering inches from mine. They scanned my room, not the window, like they were already inside. Every instinct told me not to move. Predators respond to movement. Predators love it. I held still, counting each breath, waiting for the sun to rise so I could pretend I imagined it. At dawn, the window was clear. Nothing outside but a dead courtyard and a trash bin knocked over on its side. Something had climbed it recently. I could see the dents. I considered leaving, but moving costs money. And paranoia isn't cheap either. I told myself it was stress. New place, old pipes, weird nights. A rational person would stay calm. On the fourth night, the window exhaled again, but this time I smelled it, damp soil, something metallic, and the bitter scent of a wet animal. My heartbeat felt too loud. A pale hand pressed flat against the glass. 5 long fingers spread like roots, each joint bending too many times, too gently. It stroked the pane the way you'd pet a sleeping child. I whispered a shaky warning, more for myself than for it. The hand froze, listening. A soft laugh bubbled through the window, high-pitched and childish, but with a rasp beneath it. Then the hand slid downward, vanishing below the frame. My stomach dropped. My window faced a sheer drop. Nothing should be able to move beneath it. The breathing shifted sides. It migrated to the wall beside my bed, like something crawled sideways along the exterior bricks. I heard nails dragging mortar. A tiny voice whispered, "Let me see you." I grabbed my phone and shined its flashlight at the window. A pale face stared back, but on the wrong side. It was inside the reflection, not behind it. The reflection lingered even when I moved away. It copied everything late, lagging by a heartbeat. Its mouth hung open, stretching wider with every second I watched. When I reached for the curtains, the reflection reached faster. Its hand struck the glass, leaving a smear like wet clay. I stepped back, pulse thundering. The window buckled inward, just slightly, but I heard the frame strain, the caulking peel. Something pushed, testing, learning. I whispered that I wasn't alone, that people were expecting me. A stupid lie meant to scare whatever it was. But the reflection smiled like it knew better. It tapped once, twice, thrice low and deliberate. A signal, the kind a hunter gives before it pounces. I felt my breath hitch. I kept my eyes open until sunrise, watching the reflection fade into nothing as the sky warmed. The window returned to normal, pretending innocence. That morning, I noticed muddy prints on my hardwood floor, tiny, bare, shaped wrong. They led from the window to the hallway, then disappeared. By the fifth night, I barricaded the window with furniture, books, whatever I could find. It didn't matter. The breathing still came. This time, it came from behind me. I turned slowly. The reflection from the glass stood in the corner of my room, mouth stretched impossibly wide, dripping soil onto my floorboards. Its milky eyes locked on mine. It whispered. I stumbled backward, tripping over the bed frame. My pulse was frantic, hands shaking, mind racing for escape. But it took a single step forward. The room temperature dropped. My breath fogged. The creature smiled, pleased, certain. It wanted me awake. It wanted me aware. Fear tasted better that way. The lights flickered. My phone died. Every sound in the building went still, as if the entire place held its breath for what came next. I bolted for the door, but by the time I reached the handle, the breathing was already behind me again, deep, excited, hungry. I never turned around. I ran down the stairs barefoot, not stopping for anything, not even when I heard it crawling after me, its nails raking the walls. I didn't stop running until I was in the street under the sunrise, shaking, crying, gasping. Neighbors stared. I didn't care. I just needed space and light. I haven't gone back for my things. The landlord asked why I left so suddenly. I didn't answer. Some truths sound like madness when spoken. But last night, as I tried to sleep in a friend's spare room, I saw it again. Just a fogged circle on the glass. Breathing. Waiting. And I know the truth now. Whatever lived in that window didn't stay behind. It followed me out. The voice hiding inside my phone. I first heard the voice at 3:11 a.m. during one of those half-awake doom scroll spirals where your brain is too tired to function, but too wired to sleep. At first, I thought it was an ad auto-playing, but then it said my name. It wasn't a recording. It wasn't a notification. It sounded like someone whispering directly through the speaker, too close, too wet, too aware of me. I locked my phone immediately. The whisper didn't stop. I pulled the blanket over my head, trying to convince myself it was a glitch, some weird artifact of a half-broken app. But the voice followed, muffled through the fabric, asking if it could see more. Every instinct told me to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I set it on the nightstand face down and waited. My heartbeat felt like it was vibrating the mattress. At 3:17 a.m., the flashlight came on by itself. The beam pointed at my face. My phone rotated slowly, as if something underneath it shifted its weight. I stared at the glowing white light, too stunned to breathe. When I reached toward it, the flashlight shut off instantly. Right after that, the camera shutter clicked. I hadn't touched a thing. My chest tightened as the voice whispered again. This time clearer, closer. You're awake now. I backed away, pressing my spine into the wall. My phone lit up, screen glowing with a new notification, one new photo. Hands shaking, I opened it. The picture showed me lying in bed, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. But the worst part wasn't me. It was the shape crouched above my sleeping body, thin, folded wrong, with a head too smooth to be human. Its face hovered inches from mine. and its hand held my phone. I swiped out of the photo, trembling. Another picture appeared, instantly taken a second later. In this one, the creature stared directly into the camera, its mouth stretched into a ragged grin. My phone vibrated violently, the voice bleeding through the speaker. "Now you've seen me." I dropped it on the floor, heart pounding in my throat. The screen cracked, spiderwebbing across the image, but the voice didn't distort. It sounded amused. The room fell silent for a moment, too silent. No fridge hum, no street noise, no distant cars. Just stillness, my breath fogged in the air. That's when the camera turned on again. The screen lit from the floor, the front-facing camera pointed upward. The angle showed only the ceiling at first, then slowly the frame shifted. My bed came into view, then my knees, then my face. It was looking up at me from the ground. The voice whispered, "Don't move." I bolted for the door, but the lock jammed. My fingers slipped off the handle, slick with sweat. Behind me, my phone vibrated again, one long buzzing note that felt like a warning. The buzzing stopped. The flashlight came on. It aimed not at me this time, but at the space behind me, like it was illuminating something I couldn't see yet. The beam quivered, shaking slightly. Something else was holding the phone. I forced the door open and sprinted into the hallway. I didn't stop. I didn't grab shoes or a jacket. I didn't even look back. I fled down the stairs, nearly tripping several times, and didn't stop running until I reached the parking lot. I sat under a streetlight, shaking, watching the windows of my building. Nothing moved. Nothing followed. The world felt normal, again like the night had reset. At sunrise, I finally looked at my phone, still in my hand from when I ran. It wasn't cracked anymore. The screen was perfectly smooth, and there was a new notification. 2 new photos. Both were taken while I slept in my friend's car, curled up in the passenger seat. The creature was behind the glass, pressed against the window, its face smeared across the surface like it was breathing on it. The second photo, the second one, showed it inside the car with me, sitting in the back seat. Closer. I haven't slept since, but exhaustion's catching up, and my phone keeps whispering from my pocket, asking me to close my eyes just for a moment. It wants a new photo, and it always gets what it wants.